Thank you for your report, and thank you for your previous work as well. The report on the Committee of Adjustment was instructive as well. And I think that we need to, there are things that we need to do as we move forward. And, you know, your recommendations are clear and appropriate, and your comment about the timing of the election and using that as an opportunity to train people is a good one. However, at our last meeting, we did make a motion because our committees continue to sit regardless of an election, and so we made sure that Ms. Finn started to get up to speed to communicate with committees in the interim. I just want to go back to some of what Councillor Grant was saying. So in that particular situation at that meeting, we would have been, and if I can sit sort of and put on Lee Cassidy's hat and the chair of that committee, and a spontaneous event occurs where somebody says that they want to deal with something in camera, we would then move to amend the agenda to add that and then have a proper debate on whether it should go in camera or not. Is that correct?
That was the point I made earlier. That's correct.
Okay. So that's what ideally that would fit the rules.
Yeah, that would fit the rules. That's one model.
Okay.
The model that was just discussed is
Right.
one that could also work.
Okay, postponing and saying, okay, let's not deal with this now. Let's look at giving proper notice for the next meeting. Okay. And then once you debate it, if you decide to go in camera, because it falls under those rules, when you come back from the in camera, then you have a rise in report where you generally indicate what's going on in the in camera. Okay. So I want to just tell you that your comments about volunteers are well taken. I mean, volunteers come to the table because they want to participate and they want to help. They don't necessarily come to the table with all of the technical knowledge. And so clearly the city has a responsibility to provide training. You also state in your report that if there is no training, if we haven't provided training, then it's kind of obvious that volunteers are going to rely on council members or staff that are present during those meetings. So my comment to all of us is that as council members, when we sit at those committees, we are held to a higher standard. And that's just the way it is. I know that as we move forward, we're going to get proper training and we need to do better on that score. Not just for volunteers, but for ourselves to understand how those rules work. Because volunteers are naturally going to look to us, and we're going to be able to, we need to be able to make those proper decisions around transparency. So my comment is that we have to be careful. I think we're held to a higher standard, as we should be. And so your comments are well taken, and we now have work to do so that not only are the volunteers trained, but that we are also going to be able to meet those requirements and show some leadership as well if there are some gaps, or if volunteers turn to us and say, I'm not too sure how to proceed. So thank you for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I would just like to apologize for my voice, as my wife says it's a man cold, so it's much worse than a regular cold. But I just wanted to thank you for your report, and I have probably been one of the strongest advocates for transparency and accountability as a council. And I think that before we muddy the waters and we look at all these different models, or one of our standing committees should have one model and someone could choose another model, or we, bombard the clerk's office with seeing if something is in camera, I think that we need to adapt the easy way. And with all due respect to volunteers who sit as chairs or committee members, that when we have something like this, we should not entertain it, and if we need to call another special meeting the next day, but we can serve the right notice and not have people, feel it or being asked to leave the room because we're going in camera. I think it all ties in, and I think that we need to be careful that when we do the training, because I think we do need the training, and there's people, lay appointments who come on board and new council members who come on board that need the training, but I think that we need to be very careful as to what models or how we pick models to move forward with all of the committees, since there is so many committees. And I think that there comes times where we were as a city or as a city standing committee, we were at fault this time, and that what was done shouldn't have been done, clearly, as to what you outline in your report and we move forward, but I think it's really important that when the time does come that we're looking at picking a model or picking a strategy that how we're going to deliver the agenda and let people know when there's something there that it's consistent with all our committees, and that if I'm a volunteer committee chair on this committee or on that committee, I know that I'm following the model that the city has put forth or council has, recommended that, or the clerk's department has recommended that this is the way we move forward. So I just want to say thank you for your report, and moving forward, I mean, we need to make sure, but I don't think there's anything wrong with us as a committee saying, as a council saying that, in this particular case, we were at fault, and I've said that from day one, that sometimes it's better that we say that what happened shouldn't have happened, and we apologize for that. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Tito? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank you for your report. I think it's quite clear that your investigation shows that you stepped in the hole and that we're at fault for having done things the way that they came out, as per your investigation, showing that the provisions of the act show that we should have done things a little bit differently. And your recommendations are quite direct as to how that should be handled, and training needs to be provided. Direction, potentially written provisions to members of committees and chairs should be in place. We're moving into a new council in a couple of months. I think management has the opportunity to develop the tools to be able to provide that kind of information to the new committee structure that's coming up. And your recommendations are quite specific as to how it should be handled and the things that we should do and not do in the future. I want to thank you for that.
Councilor Carr, please.